Yeah, we're staying with that story. Cabinet is disappointed by the refusal of the Israeli government to respect international law and its continued undermining of the United Nations resolutions for the implementation of a ceasefire with impunity. This was said by Minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, as she announced that the cabinet had decided to recall all South African diplomats from Tel Aviv for consultation. Well, Minister Ntshavheni joins us now this morning via Teams. So good morning to you, Minister, and thank you so much for joining us in a conversation that I think is being watched not just by ourselves here at home, but certainly by the international community as well. So it is a cabinet decision. Can we talk about when it's implementable? I mean, what are the time frames looking like? When do we see these diplomats come home, and what happens next?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. And it is implementable immediately. DECO are working to make sure that the diplomats come back as soon as possible. When it's possible to fly out, they will be back in South Africa.
Yeah, and then when they start this process of consultations, what does that mean? What does that look like, Minister?
The consultation is done within the DECO, so they will update the office what is the permitting situation in that part of the country, of the world, and what in their own assessment, what are the implications for us given our foreign policy, and they will make proposals on what should be forward.
Yeah, you know, there's a sense that right now, particularly after the announcement that you made yesterday morning, Minister, that South Africa and our government is taking a really decisive approach to how we speak out against what we're seeing taking place in Gaza. You used yesterday words like Holocaust in your condemnation of the actions of the Israeli ambassador to South Africa, saying that, you know, we're not going to excuse discussions that speak for it. Can we talk a little bit about why it was important for you to use those particular words, Minister?
It is important because that is what is happening on the ground. Literally, even the worst of apartheid government have not killed 10,000 people in a matter of weeks. And this is what's happening. Even that it's worse. The apartheid government on its own, what we're seeing is what was seen during the Holocaust of the Jewish people by the Nazis, when the children who are sulking on their mother's breast are being killed for merely being Palestinian. Back then they were killed for merely being Jewish. Young kids are killed for being Jewish, for being Palestinian, and it's the same thing that's happening. And that's why even previously in our cabinet statement we indicated that it's not acceptable that another Holocaust can take place under the watch of the international community.
And one thing that can't be denied is certainly the protests that have been seen in various parts of the world, the globe over, of course, protesting over the conflict in Gaza. Is there a sense that South Africa has some sway here, that when South Africa is decisive, that we might see perhaps even other African countries follow suit, in your view?
We continue to do our best to make sure we lobby and mobilize the rest of the African continent behind us. You'll recall that the president participated in the Cairo summit around the Palestinian situation, and it's part of the work that we do for a better world and a better Africa. And it's also humbling when we move, the rest of them moves with us, and we are hoping we are one voice on this one. And if you've seen on the UN resolution vote, majority of African countries voted the same way with us for the ceasefire, for the humanitarian corridors to be opened.
Yeah, those that have, I suppose, criticized or raised concern around the announcement that you made yesterday, Minister, of course, speak about what the economic implications of this decision by South Africa could be for the country. I mean, what do you say to those views when they are shared, that we have, you know, massive economic ties with Israel, and that puts that at jeopardy?
So South Africa has not severed economic ties with Israel. South Africa has recalled its ambassador for consultation. Also, South Africa has directed DECO to express or convey our disquiet with the conduct of the ambassador of Israel in South Africa. And that's what all we've done. And we'll continue to weigh the option. At some point, the economic sacrifices that we may have to make for a better world, it may yield benefits later. If you recall, during the apartheid struggle, there were countries that refused to join the sanctions against South Africa, saying it's better for the poor, it's better for their own interest. But ultimately, they had to join because a better Africa was a priority, and that better Africa could not be achieved with a South Africa that was a pariah. And similarly in this situation, there will not be peace in the world globally if the people of Palestine are not free, if the people of Israel are not free, if they cannot live side by side with each other peacefully. And for that to be achieved, we'll have to drive that message across. We'll also have to take measures to get to that point where there can be a two-nation state, where a two-state nation, where people live side by side with each other in harmony and peace without a threat to each other's security. What is happening currently in Israel will escalate to have an impact in the global community at large, and the tensions that are created globally would have an impact ultimately into the economic well-being of South Africa and the rest of the African continent. And therefore, to say the economic ties take precedence is kind of a limited view, because at the end of the day, what if Israel and Palestine are not at peace, there will not be peace globally, and when there's no peace globally, the economies of the world will not thrive.
All right. I know that in that statement or that briefing yesterday, you touched on a range of other issues, this one obviously being one of the more topical ones. But I wonder if you will just talk a little, go into some of the other issues that you did touch on as well in that media briefing, the relaunching of SAA, the upcoming voter registration. I mean, is there some optimism about some of those prospects coming our way?
So with the voter registration, if you recall when Census 2022 was released, it indicated that majority of our population are on the young side of life, and average age of South Africans is 28.5. Therefore, you are having a lot of younger voters coming through who have not voted for the first time, and the voter registration weekend gives us an opportunity to get those young ones to register to vote for the first time in their lives, but also those who have moved to also update their details so that they can vote, because voting is important for us to create a participatory democracy that is meaningful. And on the issue that you've raised on SAA, the relaunch, it's a good sign that the rebuilding of the SOCs is going on in earnest, and there's improvement, though the SAA is also going through finding an equity partner, the process of finding an equity partner. But the work that has been done is enough to make sure that it could go back to the international route, and the Brazil-Sao Paulo route was just one of the first ones. That will contribute significantly in improving the international travel to South Africa, and thus improving tourism. Tourism was one of the sectors that were badly affected by COVID-19. It was ravaged by COVID-19. We've seen it's rebuilding, and now we've reported in October 5.5 million visitors traveled into South Africa, and that shows that we are rebuilding better, and it's a 68.3% improvement from previous year numbers that we've received. That shows that we are progressively building up the tourism sector. So SAA's coming back is not only about it, it's also about rebuilding the economy and recovering the economy. In the cabinet statement, we also spoke about the logistics roadmap that has been consulted by the Department of Transport. It is important because part of what the President spoke about when he addressed the nation last week was a part of the economic recovery mechanisms we're doing to rebuild the economy, and the medium-term budget policy statement also indicated measures we're doing to make sure that we rebuild the economy so that it can be more resilient and not be sustainable and not be susceptible to impacts of a global nature, or minimize it. And the logistics sector plays a critical role in that space. So that roadmap will unlock the challenges that we've been facing in the freight and logistics sector, complementing the work that we're doing in the National Logistics Crisis Committee.
Yeah, just one more question before I let you go. And I know we did zone in on some of the national issues there, which are critical issues, of course, Minister Ntshavheni. But if we will just go back to some of the international issues, right? One of the things that you talked about yesterday was Cabinet having welcomed the confirmation by both the United States administration and Congress on the intention to extend AGOA, which brings certainty to the investment community of the AGOA-eligible countries. How much of that announcement, or that sort of confirmation of the want to extend AGOA, also, I suppose, informs the confidence with which South Africa speaks in some of the global bigger, geopolitical shifts like the Gaza Strip?
I think it's that confirmation reaffirms the argument we have made as government that South Africa is a sovereign state and it will take all the decisions or policy decisions that are in the interest of South Africa, national interest of South Africa, a better Africa and a better world. And that's what informs our foreign policy. And that confirmation, if you recall, majority of those in the media and some commentators were saying AGOA will not be extended because of the position that South Africa has taken of neutrality, and also that neutrality which was in pursuit of peace in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And we have indicated that the US understands our position and they know we're not a 55th state of the United States. And that's the confirmation. But also, it also confirms the value of our relationship, and that the relationship of South Africa and the US is not only beneficial to South Africa, it's also beneficial to the United States of America. And the relationship of the USA with Africa is not only beneficial to Africa, it's also beneficial to the United States of America. And South Africa and Africa are bigger players, more especially if you look at what's going to happen in the future. We are the largest reservoirs of resources, which we are now saying we're not going to export them as raw, as stones, as rocks and stone, as our president say. We're going to beneficiate them and they grow out. So if that relationship is not strengthened, the US tends to lose an opportunity. But Africa is also going to be the largest consumer market with a projected population growth by 2030. We're going to be the leading continent in terms of the population in the globe. And therefore, the US also needs that relationship. So is that work that we do that reaffirms the progress that we continue to make in voicing our position and the position of Africa in the rest of the international discussions.
Yeah, well, we know that if we kept you here, we could talk all day, but we really do appreciate your time, Minister. Thank you so much for giving it to us, because there is so much to touch on. Minister in the presidency, the Minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, speaking to us. And of course, we're going to keep bringing you more coverage on South Africa's decision, or Cabinet's decision, to withdraw diplomats from Tel Aviv.